My name is Mark, and I used to believe that family meant trust. That no matter what, my parents would always have my back. I was wrong, because while I spent years working hard, following their rules and doing everything right, they were making a choice behind my back. A choice that would destroy everything I had planned for my future. They stole from me everything I had saved, everything they had promised, and they didn't even flinch. Worse, when I confronted them, they called me selfish. But this time, I wasn't just going to walk away. No, this time, I was going to make them pay. Sometimes I wonder if my life would have turned out differently if I had never trusted them. My parents' voices still echo in my mind, full of warmth and certainty, telling everyone who would listen about my bright future. I remember my 10th birthday, balloons floating above me as my dad lifted me onto his shoulders, his voice booming with pride. Mark's going to have a brilliant future. His college fund is secured, and he'll never have to worry about a thing. Those words wrapped around my childhood like a security blanket, shielding me with the belief that my dreams were safe, that no matter what path I chose, I would be supported. But today, standing in the cold, sterile silence of the bank, that illusion shattered into a million pieces. "I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson," the bank manager said, her voice laced with uncomfortable sympathy. The account was emptied almost 2 years ago. A sharp, sinking feeling spread through my chest. My heart pounded, my breath quickened. Emptied. My voice came out in a whisper, barely audible over the ringing in my ears. That's impossible." The manager hesitated before sliding a document across the desk. "It was withdrawn by your parents." Betrayal hit me like a physical blow. I stared at the paper, my name signed in a handwriting that wasn't mine. They stole from me. I stumbled out of the bank, my legs unsteady, my mind racing with denial. Each step I took felt like walking on broken glass. I had trusted them. I had believed in them. How could they do this? By the time I reached my parents' house, my hands were shaking with anger. I stormed inside, finding my mother at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee like nothing had happened. My father stood by the window, staring outside, completely at ease, as if they hadn't just ripped my future out from under me. "How could you?" My voice trembled with hurt, accusation, disbelief. "You took everything from my savings." "Why?" They exchanged a glance, as if deciding who would be the one to break me. My mother sighed, setting her cup down with an irritated clink. "Ryan needed it more, Mark." "Ryan." "My older brother." I could barely process her words. Ryan had just bought a house, a beautiful house, in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. But my voice caught in my throat. He just bought a home. I was counting on that money. "Yes." My father finally spoke, his voice cold and matter-of-fact. "And he bought that home because we helped him. He's had difficulties that you wouldn't understand." I felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. "Difficulties," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Ryan just threw a housewarming party last month. He's not struggling. You've always been the spoiled one, Mark." My father continued, his gaze finally meeting mine, sharp and unyielding. "It's time you learned to stand on your own." His words sliced through me like a knife. Spoiled? I had worked tirelessly to prove myself, to follow every rule they set. I had never been reckless, never made mistakes like Ryan had. And yet, it was me who was being punished? "You promised that money was for my future," I whispered, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. My mother scoffed, shaking her head. "Oh, stop being dramatic. You'll figure something out. You always do." I stood there, frozen, my mother's dismissive words reopening wounds I had buried for years. Every forgotten birthday, every moment Ryan was favored over me, every achievement of mine that was ignored, while Ryan's smallest victories were celebrated like triumphs. I thought my parents had protected me, but they had only ever seen me as disposable. "You lied to me," I said, my voice steady now, filled with something deeper than anger. "All these years, you made me believe I mattered to you as much as Ryan did." My father turned away, his gaze drifting back to the garden. "Dismissing me. as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "Grow up, Mark," he muttered. "This is real life. Not everything revolves around you." His casual cruelty pierced through me, but something else began to stir in its place. A fire. A defiance I had never allowed myself to feel before. I wouldn't let them reduce me to nothing. I wouldn't be their afterthought. I turned to leave, my vision blurred with tears. Not of helplessness, but of determination. They thought they had silenced me, broken me. They had no idea how wrong they were. Before we continue the story, I want to connect with all of you, my amazing viewers. Where are you watching from? Drop the flag of your country in the comments below. I love seeing how far our stories reach. Now, let's get back to it. The house felt colder than it should have. Maybe it was the weight of betrayal, the suffocating realization that the people who should have protected me had ripped away my future without a second thought. But as I stepped out into the night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to let this slide. I drove straight to Ryan's house, the house my money had helped pay for. The massive windows glowed with warm light, laughter spilling out from inside. The contrast was jarring. Inside those walls, my brother was celebrating, oblivious to the destruction left in his wake. I knocked harder than necessary. A few seconds later, the door swung open, and there he stood, casual, drink in hand, dressed in an expensive sweater I knew he hadn't paid for himself. His face twisted into a smirk the moment he saw me. Well, he said, stepping aside without an invitation. "Didn't expect you to show up. Thought you'd be too busy crying to Mom and Dad." The bitterness surged up before I could stop it. "Cut the crap, Ryan," I said, stepping inside. The place reeked of wealth. Sleek furniture, designer decor, a massive flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. Every inch of it screamed luxury. Luxury that wasn't his. I turned to face him, fists clenched at my sides. "You stole my future," Ryan scoffed, setting his drink down on the marble countertop. "Oh, please. It wasn't even your money, Mark. It was just sitting there, wasting away. You'll be fine. You always are." That was it. The final crack before the dam broke. "Do you even hear yourself?" My voice was rising now, my breath uneven. That money wasn't a gift. It wasn't some extra cash lying around. It was mine. I worked for it. I saved every dollar, every birthday check, every spare cent so I wouldn't have to struggle. And you just took it like it was nothing? Ryan rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic." The casual dismissal hit me like a slap. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the principle. The way he stood there, utterly unbothered, told me everything I needed to know. Ryan had never respected me. Not as his brother. Not as an equal. "You don't even feel guilty, do you?" I said, my voice quieter now, laced with disbelief. "Guilty?" Ryan actually laughed, shaking his head. "Why would I? You'll land on your feet. You always do. Hell, maybe this will teach you a little humility." I stared at him, feeling something inside me snap. "You're unbelievable." "Thanks," he said, raising his glass like it was a toast. "I try." I turned to leave, but then I heard him. His voice dropping to a smug whisper, meant only for the room. "Can you believe he actually thought he deserved that money?" My body went rigid. The humiliation burned through me, hot and suffocating. But beneath it, something sharper cut through. I would make them pay. As I walked out of his house, the laughter behind me felt like nails in my back. But this time, I wasn't walking away in defeat. I was walking away with a plan. That plan led me straight to my Uncle Mike. Mike had always been the outlier in our family. He wasn't rich. He wasn't flashy. He was the quiet, steady presence at family gatherings, the one who never quite fit in with my parents' obsession with appearances. But more importantly, he was the only one who had ever seen me. So when I showed up at his doorstep late that night, he didn't ask questions. He just opened the door and let me in. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice tight with emotion. Mike nodded, gesturing toward the couch. "I'm listening." And for the first time, I told someone everything. The stolen money, the forged signatures, the years of favoritism, the way my parents had dismissed my pain like it was nothing, the way Ryan had mocked me for daring to stand up for myself. Mike sat in silence as I spoke, his face unreadable. But when I finished, when the last words left my mouth like a final exhale, he let out a slow breath and shook his head. "I should have said something sooner," he murmured, his voice tinged with regret. "I've seen how they treat you. I told myself it wasn't my place. But I should have known better." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" Mike leaned forward, eyes locked onto mine. "You fight back." I blinked. "What? You think this is just about the money?" he said. "This is about control. They took your money because they knew they could get away with it. They don't think you'll do anything. Prove them wrong." A cold determination settled over me. "How?" Mike stood up, disappearing into the other room. When he came back, he was holding a folder. He set it down in front of me. "I know a guy, a lawyer, a good one." He tapped the folder. "We're going to find out just how deep this goes. And then, we're going to make sure they regret it." I stared at the folder, my pulse pounding in my ears. I had always thought that walking away was the high road, that if I just worked hard enough, I could prove myself without stooping to their level. But maybe this time walking away wasn't enough. Maybe it was time to fight, and this time I wouldn't lose. The next few days passed in a blur of research, legal consultations, and sleepless nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Ryan's smug laughter, my parents' dismissive voices, the words that had sliced through me like knives. But the more I uncovered, the more my rage solidified into something sharper: resolve. Mike's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa, didn't waste time sugarcoating the situation. "Your parents didn't just withdraw the money," she explained, flipping through the documents. "They committed bank fraud. Your signature was forged on multiple transactions. And based on these investment documents, they even falsified paperwork to justify the withdrawals." I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the edge of my chair. "What does that mean exactly?" Lisa met my gaze steadily. "It means you have a case, a strong one. But once we move forward, there's no turning back." I nodded, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. They didn't leave me a choice. With Lisa on board, we started gathering everything: bank statements, transaction records, even messages between my parents and Ryan where they casually discussed helping Ryan out with Mark's fund. Every new piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin. But I wasn't just going to sue them. No, I wanted them to feel the humiliation they had so carelessly tossed onto me. I planned a family dinner under the guise of reconciliation. A final gathering where I would watch them unravel from the inside out. The night of the dinner, tension crackled in the air before a single word was spoken. My parents sat at the head of the table, basking in their usual sense of control. Ryan, smug as ever, leaned back in his chair, already assuming I had come to make peace. I waited until the conversation lulled, until my mother's voice carried through the room, full of pride as she spoke to relatives. "Yes, we generously helped Ryan purchase his home. Family supports each other, after all." That was my cue. "Actually," I said, setting my fork down with deliberate slowness, "there's something you all should know." The room quieted. All eyes turned to me. My father's expression tightened slightly, but Ryan still looked amused. I met my mother's gaze, my voice calm and even. "I filed fraud charges against you." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's wine glass paused midair. My father's face drained of color. Ryan's smirk faltered, turning into something closer to panic. "Mark," my father said sharply, his voice laced with warning. "This isn't the time." I ignored him. "You didn't just take my money. You forged my signature. You falsified documents. You stole my future, and you thought I'd just let it go. Mark, stop this nonsense right now." My mother snapped, her voice rising. But there was something else in it now: fear. Ryan's voice cut in louder and angrier. "You're blowing this out of proportion. You're ruining our family over some stupid money." I turned to him, my expression cold. No, Ryan. You ruined this family the moment you decided you were entitled to everything I worked for. His face twisted, his usual arrogance slipping. Mark, come on, man. This isn't. I have evidence, I interrupted. It's already with my lawyer. And unless you want to explain to a judge why my name is forged on bank documents, I suggest you stop talking. The panic spread. My mother gripped the edge of the table like she could steady the unraveling situation with sheer willpower. My father's jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists. You're being cruel, my mother hissed. After everything we've done for you. You didn't do it for me, I shot back. You did it for him, and you expected me to just roll over and take it. But guess what? I leaned forward slightly, voice lowering to a dangerous calm. I'm not your doormat anymore. Ryan slammed his glass down. You're a selfish little. No, I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. For once in my life, I'm putting myself first, and you all get to deal with the consequences. The chaos erupted the second I stepped away from the table. My mother pleading, my father growling threats, Ryan throwing accusations like a desperate man grasping at anything to hold on to control. But it was useless. I had already won, and they knew it. The fallout was swift and brutal. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from my mother, texts from my father, long, rambling voice messages from Ryan. I didn't answer, not a single one. I had said everything I needed to say. Instead, I focused on what came next. Lisa moved fast, filing the lawsuit and bringing in the bank's fraud investigation team. My parents had assumed their power, their influence, their name would shield them. But fraud wasn't just a family dispute, it was a crime. And once the investigation started, the cracks in their carefully built world began to show. Their finances were scrutinized, their assets frozen. Friends who had once admired them now whispered behind their backs. The perfect image they had spent years maintaining was crumbling before their eyes. Ryan, of course, lost everything. The house, the one my money had helped pay for, was repossessed. He tried to fight it, but he had no leg to stand on. He went from living in luxury to begging for help, his arrogance replaced with desperation. And that's when the messages changed. The rage turned to pleading. Mark, you have to stop this. I made a mistake. Okay? But we're brothers. Please, man. I'll pay you back. Just give me time. You're destroying our family. Do you even care? I stared at the last one for a long time before finally responding. Did you care when you stole from me? Ryan never replied. As for my parents, they tried everything. Denial, manipulation, guilt-tripping. But nothing worked. When the final ruling came down, it was merciless. They were ordered to repay everything, but it was too late. Their reputation was shattered. Their influence gone. I should have felt victorious. But there was an ache inside me that I couldn't shake. Because for all the pain they caused me, they were still my family. And some part of me, some small, broken part, had still wanted them to fight for me. But they never did. Not once did they say, "We're sorry, Mark. We messed up. We should have treated you better." Not once did they try to make things right. Instead, they blamed me. You turned your back on us. You let money destroy this family. You should be ashamed. But I wasn't, because for the first time in my life I was free. I moved forward, leaving them in the past where they belonged. My career took off. I bought my own home, one I earned. I built friendships with people who valued me. I surrounded myself with a new kind of family, one built on respect, trust, and real love. And as the years passed, the pain faded. The anger dissolved. The scars remained, but they no longer defined me. Then one evening, years later, my phone rang. It was Ryan. I stared at the screen, my heart steady, my mind clear. Then, without hesitation, I hit decline. And just like that, I closed the final door on the past. Because I had already won. And I had never needed their validation to begin with. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about self-worth, breaking free, and choosing yourself even when the people who should love you the most let you down. It's a reminder that family isn't about blood. It's about who truly values and respects you. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's power. Now, I want to hear from you. Comment 2 if you liked the story, or 7 if you didn't. Let's talk about it. And if you enjoy these powerful, emotional stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Mr. HeartVibes for more. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more with you.